And welcome back to another episode of On the Bench with Beeks. This is episode 41, and I am your host, Cody Beekman. I am joined, as always, by Bryce McMillan,
How's it going, everybody?
Ross Mormeyer,
Hey, what's up, guys?
and Daniel Beatty.
Hello, everybody.
Today we got a special show today, and with us is a great guy. Met off of Twitter. He's a Locked On Avalanche contributor, Mile High Sticking contributor, and got his own podcast running now called Fourth Line Minutes. Kyle Sullivan. Kyle, say hello to everybody on the bench.
Hello, everyone on the bench. It is an honor to be on the show.
Well, we're stoked to have you, man. We've got a great show going on. We're going to be talking about, yes, it is confirmed. We are going to have hockey this season, so we're going to get into that, talk about a little bit of divisions, talk about some old Southern Alabama cooking hockey, and we're going to get into it with a little hockey day in history. So
Good old jambalaya.
Some good old jambalaya, as Newman would say on Seinfeld. I love how much Seinfeld actually pops up on this show. It's awesome. So as per usual, we're going to let the guests kick off our Hockey Day in History. Kyle, what do you got for Hockey Day in History?
On this day in the year 2014, the NHL was enduring a pandemic. A mumps outbreak sweeps through the NHL on this day in 2014.
I remember that.
Oh, man.
You know what's so funny about that, actually? It's hilarious that you bring that up. I mean, obviously, seeing how we're in this awful pandemic right now, but the thing I remember most from that is Sidney Crosby's just mumped face.
Yeah.
When he was in his interview before he actually found out he had mumps, he just had like this entire right side of his face was like jutting 2 inches out. It was just like something's wrong with this guy, and I just remember all the hilarious memes and stuff that going around with it. So that's hilarious that you bring that up.
Yeah, I remember it being if the Syracuse Crunch would even survive this pandemic, and now look where we are.
Oh, right.
The Miffalumps.
That's an interesting Hockey Day in history. I love it. I'm gonna go left to right. So let's go, Daniel Beatty. What you got for Hockey Day?
All right. Well, after not mentioning Gretzky at all, I'm going to go back to back with him here. And I'm going to go back to December 18th, 1983, because this is just one of those insane stats among his insane stats that I just have a hard time comprehending is real. He plays against the Winnipeg Jets, and they beat them 7-5, which already is an indication that the score is probably crazy. And that's Wayne Gretzky's 100th point for the season. Just happened to be in Game 34.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Man. This is...
Yeah.
I mean,
like, what the hell, man? He... oh yeah, I got 100 points in one season. Oh, good for you. At that pace, he lapped you. He'd get... That might have been the season he got 212. I should look that up, but that was just nuts, eh? 100 points in Game 34?
That's absolutely ridiculous.
Man.
I mean, I that goes without saying. I mean, the great one.
Mm-hmm.
So, 100 points in 30 games, sweet. All right, Ross,
Right.
what do you got for Hockey Day in history?
Well, this day in hockey history, December 16th, 1993, the Quebec Nordiques, Joe Sakic, scores his 200th NHL career goal in an unfortunate 3-2 loss to the Flyers. So, but yeah, I figured I'd do that since I got my reverse retro in, so.
Nice. Way to follow the reverse retro dream, essentially, Look at that guy.
Look
Look at that guy go. Look at that guy go.
Just to mention, I've got a reverse retro jersey now. All right, Bryce, what do you got, man?
All right, so on this Hockey Day in history, the Blackhawks retired Bobby Hall's uniform number 9 in a pregame ceremony at Chicago Stadium. However, Blackhawks lost 5-1 to the visiting Boston Bruins, Cody.
Oi, oi, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. A little Bostonian pride there. You know, I gotta say, man, I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of professional hockey players in my day. I mean, just being lucky and just being in and out the hockey community. I gotta say, Ross and we had the distinguished pleasure of meeting him completely out of the blue. We were going to an Avs Blackhawks game, and we were going to switch out the.
It was his birthday that night too.
Yeah, we were going to switch out our tickets for ADA seats, and I was just sitting there while Ross was switching them out, and I turn around, and who do I see? The fucking Golden Jet just coming in on his rascal. And I'm sitting there staring at him, and Ross comes up to the side of me. He's like, dude, what are you looking at? I'm like, dude, that's Bobby Hull. That's fucking Bobby Hull. And like our eyes met, Bobby and I's met, and it seemed like we were like lost friends. And I just drive straight up to him, and next thing you know, we're just chatting hockey with him, and we even got to take an elevator ride with him, and it was just
great.
He was such a down-to-earth guy, and I mean, it's definitely something I'll never forget ever again.
I do like what he said to his family and friends that were with him. Like, they're all standing there like, oh, come on, Bobby. He's like, no, I want to ride the elevator with my new friends. Like, it was just like, whoa, okay, what the hell?
That's really cool.
After we get out the elevator, like Ross and I just kind of look at each other, like, do you realize how many NHL goals, like scoring titles, Stanley Cups we just talked to? Like, just ridiculous. Like, it was just nuts.
I don't think I washed my hands for like a week and a half after shaking his. So I mean, I just sit there and just looked at it for like all the time.
I touched the gold. I touched the Golden Jet. I literally touched him. But no, great guy, and if you're listening, Bobby, thank you for being such a stand-up guy to us and having a chat with us. All right, so I'm gonna close this Hockey Day in history off real quick here. On December 18th, 2003, Ottawa's Daniel Alfredsson became just the second player in team history to score 200 goals, as the Senators won 6-1 over the visiting Chicago Blackhawks. Alfredsson would also add an assist in the game. So, gotta bring up my boy Alfie. You know me with my Swedish hockey, so gotta mention Alfie every now and then.
There's a trend
well,
on
he was
this
such
show.
An amazing player.
We get me with the Gretzky, Ross on the Canuck hating, and you with the Swedish guys every time. It's awesome.
It's almost become quite predictable at this point. The only one that's really like a wild card is like Bryce.
Pretty much.
But anyways, let's get to it, man. We've got a lot to talk about and some very exciting news. We will have a NHL season this season. It's going to be a 56-game season, which we were all kind of actually just thinking a 48-game season. So that's that's a plus right there. And we're going to be starting January 13th with like a January 1st kind of preseason training camp. So, boys, tell me about it. How excited are you? What do you expect in the coming weeks? How everybody's going to be getting prepared for it?
I'm pretty stoked. From the sounds of it, looking through multiple resources, NHL.com, most of these players are back at home at their own hometowns where they're playing. So they're ready to go. It sounds like everyone's kind of ready for a go come January, especially when they're back in their towns where they're playing at. So it sounds like, little retrospect, small news, little thing to look at, but it sounds to me like if they're back in town, they're ready to go. soon as possible. I'm stoked on it.
Yeah, Kyle, what do you think here, man?
I think it's going to be a fascinating sprint through this shortened season. And I mean, we're starting up like second week of January. This could mark 11 months since some teams have played. So there's going to be some really well-rested teams coming into this sprint of a season. And how the NHL handles any potential COVID outbreaks is going to be interesting. We might still be staring at 48 games, so that's not outside the realm of possibility at this point. Also if we do have to shut things down for certain teams, so it's going to be very interesting.
That is a good point. I mean, especially how the NFL's been dealing with their stuff. I mean, you've got game cancellations, you've got game postponements, so it will be an interesting way. What do you guys think they will do to combat that? Do you think it's going to be a little more bubble-ish, or what? Like, I don't know. Where are we looking here? Because obviously we're looking at like different divisions. Obviously daily testing. Where are you guys sitting right now on the idea? Like, if you were to compare it to the NFL, what do you guys think would be happening here?
Well, I really liked what Mike Chambers talked about with us on an earlier episode about the business side of the NHL and how it survives and how all of these leagues are very tied to their TV contracts. But unfortunately for the NHL, just that contract is more dependent on their survival than another franchise. So they are pressured into playing in every arena. However, we can't really foresee that truly taking place. The NFL, as a comparison, only plays 16 games in a season, and they're having trouble just traveling on that bare minimum alone. They're canceling games in college football, allowing Ohio State to compete for the Big Ten championship without playing their minimum 6 games, I believe, or 5 or whatever it was. So there's already these like contingency rules being played upon, which I think in the NHL is an inevitability if they went about it trying to play in every stadium. So I don't think that's ever really going to happen. But they might be pressured into it from the financial standpoint. And unfortunately, that seems to be the modus operandi for the Never Fail League right now. They say players' health is important, but their actions speak otherwise. And I don't see how the NHL and that board being more financially pressured is going to then be any more health lenient. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Daniel, I agree with that 100%, especially when you look at how, when you said there's only a 16-game season in the NFL, and you look at what goes into an NHL locker room and practice facility, there's a lot less people running around. You don't have a practice squad essentially with you in the same facility. So you're also in an arena where there's not going to be fans. And I look at that and I go, we're also seeing teams where they're debating not having inside games, but actually having outside arenas, which is pretty awesome. Yep. So you think of the ventilation piece of that. And I also, again, look past in the past where the NHL was the first out of the big four sports to finish their season and actually have a championship, and with 0 COVID cases because of the bubble fact. So I think this could maybe be a lot better than we saw in the playoffs when you look up the research and maybe in the time past what they've thought of to kind of keep COVID cases down. It could be a lot better, I feel like.
Yeah, because if you also look at it to piggyback off of what Bryce said, the NFL has the 16 games. The NHL just went through a whole entire playoff with brackets and everything to get into it and didn't have an outbreak whatsoever. So I feel that they're going to rely heavily on this bubble system for sure, just because they are looking out for player safety and just to not be part of that moral majority where they have positive cases every single week, because that'll just elongate the season, especially if they're wanting playoffs and everything to be said and done by, I think it was July 7th is what I read. So that just depends on how they do it. But if they stick with this bubble aspect of it, I think it could be a very smooth season.
The only I have one problem that I just kind of thought about this is that like you've got the NFL that normally goes about like at least 4 to 5, maybe even a week's worth of days between games. Hockey's a little bit different, whereas you're almost playing almost every other night. Do you think that might be a problem with COVID outbreak in any way possible?
It's a great question.
If sanitation happens between every game.
I think if they adopt that series model where you travel and play a team like 3 games in a row, and then take a couple days off and then go again like the MLB did, I think that would be the best way to hit all the teams in your division and still leave yourself some wiggle room in case there is an outbreak, but it limits the travel itself because the divisions are lined up in such a way that the travels are limited as much as possible. And if you play, say, go to San Jose, play them 3 games, and then a couple weeks later they come to Colorado and they play the Avs for 3 games, there you just knocked out 6 of the 53 right there.
That's a really good point, actually.
And I mean, I've even heard to where the Sharks are going to use the Raiders Stadium for them to play. So you could get Vegas and San Jose knocked out in one trip and not have to go anywhere too, if you do that 3-game series system.
Yeah, you can have a little isolated bubble in that little series system where you can have a couple local teams that come in and everybody knock out their series real quick, and that little soft bubble, and then just move it to the next closest place. I think that's probably where they might be leaning, but who's to say at this point?
That brings up an interesting point. It almost sounds like the NHL is using the NFL's off season to capitalize on their stadiums to play outdoor games, which is a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
well, that's something.
And they could even use some college stadiums too, if they wanted to. Yeah. If you look at it.
Please, God, not Air Force Stadium again.
Okay, not Air Force, but it'd be like.
Some CU alumni. I'll take it.
Yeah. Either that or CSU's new stadium. That'd be perfect too. Or
Evergreen. Let's play on a lake.
So, in that case, let's talk about these teams that are actually looking at playing outdoors. The thing that worries me is the money that goes into actually setting up these ice rinks in these outdoor stadiums. Is that, I mean, in some point, I mean, especially now more than ever, the NHL is going to be worried about capital. Is that do you guys think that's going to eat into a lot of the NHL's capital this year? Setting up outdoor rinks?
Well, here, like I'm in Alabama, we can have fans in our college football stadiums. So I know it's going to be expensive to put on an outdoor game, but you can also limit the capacity and social distance in a much bigger stadium, and at least kind of offset the financials in that way by having an actual attendance, which the NHL hasn't had in a while. Yeah, 10-20%, let them in, distance them, and just use some of that to offset the expenses incurred on an outdoor game, the setup and all that.
It's kind of like the NFL was a good example of this. They limited a certain amount of fans in outdoor stadiums to see how that went. You can definitely do the same thing with hockey, but I also think of the revenue that comes from having these outdoor games, like the Stadium Series we had a couple of years ago, or the game we have every single year on a New Year's Day. So you look at those things, you're like, what kind of revenue does that bring in? Can we space apart people and also play outdoor games and kind of make it a sport where it's outdoors again? Because hockey is really an outdoor sport in the wintertime, so it kind of gives more of a feeling to the game when you're a fan and a player too as well. So it could spark revenue, it could not. just based on the amount of people you have in an arena too.
Well,
It's an interesting idea.
And you got to think like a lot of fans would probably be more eager to go, especially in places where they haven't had an outdoor game yet. I mean, obviously fans are going to want to go to games anyways. So I mean, yeah, I can see that'd be a great way to make up the possible lost revenue of not having fans, and kind of combat the amount of money that you're spending on actually making the outdoor rink. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I'm concerned about from the league's point of view, if I am voting as the NHL, that involves a vote by the owners, and the owners probably have a stake in their arena, and if not, they're paying a lease to be in an arena. And they better have some kind of business proposal in place right now where if they aren't playing in their arenas, they're also not having to pay rent on those arenas. Because otherwise, guys, all of these owners are still paying the lease on their arenas. And so some of these talks that you're hearing about where it's like, hey, we're going to have the Sharks play in this arena. I don't know the exact teams, but part of the reason those talks are taking place is because the owner of NHL Club A also owns Football Club B in same arena location. So it's
All right, so here's a few of teams. It's Pittsburgh Penguins, Boston Bruins, Los Angeles Kings. Those are some of the ones that are really debating this, like actually maybe really debating having outdoor games.
Well, the other part about the outdoor game thing I was going to say, though, is part of the reason they're thinking about doing that is because that allows their fans to come. There's no other way for their fans to attend, or it's the way that this club in this city under its COVID restrictions are allowed to participate at all in a sport. So part of this is not, hey, can we make money? Part of it is like, literally, is this the only practical way we can put this on? So when you
Safe option.
right, but when you actually then implement the outdoor scenario, whatever that costs, it's going to be an expense. So it has to offset whatever your costs are in your arena. So it has to be covered by some kind of like disaster relief insurance or something like that. So you'll see these plans move forward, but only if it's not at the sake of losing money, because the owners are going to vote on these decisions, and they're very concerned because of all the money they're already losing every year.
And Mike Chambers came out with an article not too long ago, and Avalanche lost nearly 2% of revenue last year. And that's really based on fans not showing up to games because everyone had this COVID issue. So some teams might even have the budget because they've lost maybe a lot of money due to what happened during the COVID pandemic back in March. So it's not realistic for anybody when they're trying to save money.
No, it's not. Well, they want to make it fun.
There's some teams
hope that it's financially viable, but it's very hard to see how that's the case. So I think they're just trying to cut their losses as much as possible, really, just to put the season on. Because I think the reason why we saw the NHL start trying to get back into delayed escrow negotiations and stuff is because you had the owner pressure being like, we need a different situation. We're already losing a lot of money. And it's like, nope, sorry, guess what? We already signed the CBA. That's why we kind of did all that already. So.
Well, and that just goes to say what what San Jose was planning on doing and playing in Vegas's the Vegas Raiders arena right now, because right now in San Jose they have signed that initiative to not have any contact sports at all within all of all the
California.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's a really good point too, Daniel. That like just having mandates from each city be completely different is a huge part of it as well. So that's a really good point. So we've got rumored division realignment, and I'm gonna spout these off if I don't fuck it up too bad. Uh,
Ooh.
and we'll take a look at these real quick. So we got the first, we got the All Canadian division, obviously Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, Winnipeg. Then you've got the first USA division, which would be Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Washington. USA 2 would be Carolina, Chicago, Columbus, Detroit, Florida. And my screen went, yeah,
And you'll have
Florida, Minnesota, Nashville, Tampa Bay, and the last one, Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Dallas, LA, San Jose, St. Louis, and Vegas. Where are we at here? I mean, obviously, I think a lot of Canadians, and I think I might be able to speak for Daniel here, is kind of excited about having an all-Canadian division. I think it'd be pretty cool. I mean, obviously, and then you've got these other divisions. Well, what are you guys' thoughts, Kyle? I'll give you the floor first.
I think, well, speaking as an Avalanche fan, that Western Conference looks really, really good on our behalf. I'm really excited for that television game Canadian Conference. The All-Canadian, just watching Toronto, Montreal as much as I want. Bring it on. But I like how it is. I like the reasoning behind it. And, I mean, it's not a forever thing. So, I mean, you can't really get upset. It's what we have to do to get through the season to limit travel. But, I mean, if you look at these divisions, it can set up for some really good rivalries going into the playoffs.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
is.
Yeah, that's a huge thing too. I mean, obviously, still keeping the game interesting while still having a methodical approach to it is a really big thing. So yeah, I can agree with that. What do what do you boys think, Bryce, Ross, Daniel?
Yeah, I think, kind of what Kyle said. I think if you're in a division and you play certain teams a certain amount of times, you're going to develop a rivalry, maybe multiple rivalries based on what happens. And so I think that can, add to really exciting hockey. More fast play, more physical play, more chippy play. And that's the kind of stuff I think I like as a hockey fan, as a hockey player. I like that kind of stuff. And I think you can probably see that in the individual division that you watch in the next upcoming season. So yeah, that's my point on that. I kind of agree with Kyle there. What do you guys think about the hardest division?
Yeah, and well, I was going to say that I agree with the rivalries and stuff and it's even going to make the current rivalries, like you got Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Washington, they're going to just be at each other's throats. I mean, you got Anaheim and LA, same thing. So yeah, I think it's going to refuel a lot of old rivalries in some of these divisions and might make a lot newer rivalries. And I'll go on with your next question. God, that's kind of hard because that they're all pretty evenly matched. You've got teams that are decent and teams that are, cup contenders in each division. So it could go in either way, I feel.
Oh, for the hardest division? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things going on there.
I mean,
Especially have just an all-Canadian division. That's going to be really interesting for the fans in Canada, especially Daniel over here.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
It's like a civil war.
I feel great for, Canada hockey. It's always fun. It seems like we have hockey night in Canada every weekend for like 30 weeks of the year, and that's always just so much fun. And when they do the double headers, it's great. And you look at this proposed division and you do the math, and that translates to basically a lockout season with a lot of like a lockout shortened season. Sorry, excuse me, with like a lot of games back to back among Canadian teams. Like as a fan, that's awesome. As a Canadian fan, though, I really want a cup back be won by a Canadian team, and it seems like the way that these divisions have been set up, we have less chance of having Canadian teams make the playoffs than if they were spread out. So from that specific point of view, I'm always looking for a reason to complain. It's not like great. But then, another thing we like to do here is like jump on the what else could go wrong for Buffalo Sabres, and gosh, it seems wrong. And I look at this East Division that they're proposing, and they're in there with the Bruins, the Hurricanes, the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Capitals. The only other team in there that didn't make the playoffs last year was the Devils. And it's like, damn, dude, like, I mean, shit.
Yeah.
Like, it just got like somehow worse for Buffalo again. I'm laughing about that. And as I look over these lists and I see the rivalries, I'm really excited about that. I hope it didn't fuck up the NHL's reverse retro jersey situation and when they were going to play against them and whatnot. But I think that's lowest on their priorities right now as to what goes into the divisions, but not on mine. I like to see the Wild Wing against the Peyote if I could. That seems dope. So, all in all,
Right.
I'm a big hockey fan about this. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be super fun. And I liked your point about just, this isn't a forever thing. Let's just kind of try to embrace it. And I love that attitude for sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, back to what you guys were mentioning about the rivalry. I mean, again, on the Avalanche side, the Stars and the Avalanche, it got really heated at the end of their playoff series in the bubble. And now the NHL has put them in their own division and said, have fun. So I think that's going to be one of the barn burners. Yeah. And it's just going to be, I think that one's going to be the one for, like, Canada and the division with the Avalanche are going to be the two, like, where the rivalries are really going to start popping off. And you can sit there and those are going to be some good TV games.
Do you think the pandemic has caused, like, the fan bases from both the Red Wings and the Avalanche to kind of forget will forget the rivalry because we now have these bubbles and division rivalries? We're going to be like, okay, now we have 3 rivalries. It could be the Red Wings. It could be the Wild and the Stars. Let's go all 3 of them. Or just the 2 of them.
I have a lot to... I just want to interject real quick. I actually have a lot to say about the Colorado-Detroit rivalry, and I'm going to try to package it in as much as I can. Put a nice little bow on it. It's just like, ever since Detroit has moved to the Eastern Conference, that rivalry really hasn't been the same. I mean, don't get me wrong, historic rivalry for sure. Always going to be a part of both teams, just histories. But as of right now, I mean, it's not the pandemic that really is like does that rivalry. It's really that the fact is we only see them twice a year anymore. And if anything, if I was to say the Avalanche having a rivalry with anyone, it would have to be the Minnesota Wild, just because of the
Game 7s,
all the playoff dramatics and animosity that's built up between them. I think if anybody, I mean, Kyle had a great point about Dallas and the Avalanche, it getting really chippy last year. So I mean. That could be a rise of a new rivalry. That's the thing that I'm really excited about, is possibly seeing new rivalries come out of this these pandemic divisions. But I also want to point out is that Chicago and Detroit are in the same division, and you got to think back to those old that old rivalry. I mean, because there was a time where Detroit and Chicago would go at it like 2 rabid Wolverines stuffed inside a sack. So that'll be kind of exciting to see. So I mean, in this whole pandemic, split division, new division kind of thing, I am excited to see what kind of new rivalries and who really fucking hates each other now,
And we might see a Happy Gilmore penalty.
And I think the
knows?
team that loses out the most with all these rivalries being spun up is next year when the Kraken come in, and all these teams are just like at each other's throats, and the Kraken just come in like, hey, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's gonna have bonded through a COVID pandemic, and it's like, hey, it's like grumpy old man syndrome. It's like, well, back in my day, and it's like, you haven't earned your stripes yet, kid. You know.
Seattle Kraken's like the SJWs of today. Like, okay, boomers. You know. So, all right. Now that we've got the realigned divisions and everything. How do we look? How do we look at playoff ranking and stuff? Are we just gonna go top four teams in each division?
Sure, that's a great
Gotta
theory.
I say maybe
Yeah.
top 2 or 3. You can go as far as that and just
You
kind of have
know?
them all go at it.
You know what, though, guys? I mean, as much as the logic totally makes sense there, part of the logic of the way the system is based on the amount of times you play certain teams in your division and all that stuff. So what if, even though we're seeing these 4 divisions, only 2 of them play each other the whole year, right? Like,
Yeah.
what if the travel affects the way it works out, that it's kind of like more the NFL style where you really have an AFC and an NFC, and they barely ever play each other the whole year until the finals. So
I
don't
think that's
know.
what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I mean, in that sense, it'll make the playoffs a little more intriguing because I mean you're going to be seeing teams that you haven't seen all year eventually. That's going to make for very interesting planning on coaches and how the team prepares for these playoff series.
And could we not add, I mean, the season's already kind of crazy as it is, and if we do happen to have those series-type matchups, could we not add the stat of a series win as a tiebreaker? Or, like, if we win a series against Anaheim, that's a tally. We win one against San Jose, and that's also a way to determine, and, spice the regular season up a little bit so you don't just kind of coast through a series. You want to rack up that series win. It's almost like an additional super point, if you will.
Well, it's kind of like if you had everyone divided up, right now we're going Canada, East, Central, West. It's almost like you're almost throwing in a Northeast, North-South, like, in a way. Like a Central. It's like you have the same division, but you're also dividing up teams within a division that play each other multiple times.
Yeah.
So very much like the NFL.
Exactly.
Yeah, and what if, like, I mean, haven't they talked for years about the decision to maybe award more points for a regulation win than an overtime win versus a shootout win? Maybe that becomes more of a factor this year than in years past. We could start seeing that be more of an indicator for playoff situations, because you're gonna have to think about it. I mean, just go off of literally every professional league that's been trying to roll out a season.
Yeah,
They've
look
been
at penalty
whittling
minutes,
down
penalty
the games that they've played. So you might have to start going to like a different system. Sorry, Bryce, what were you gonna say?
I was talking about penalty time too, or penalty minutes. That is also a thing that comes up rarely, but it's a tiebreaker. So you can look at teams you play a lot, and you look at competitive play, teams should be trying to take less penalties. So you can see a lot of interesting play, but just throwing out there a loose idea of how you can take penalty minutes and penalty time as into consideration for a playoff position.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be interesting. I mean, I'm very anxious to hear what the NHL has planned for playoff ranking and who plays who. Because I mean, you've got this like whole Canadian division, and then you've got basically a West division, and then 2 East divisions. So are you saying that no matter who in the Canadian division, you're going to have to play either the West Division or one of the East Divisions? How are you going to split this up? Are the two East Divisions going to play each other, or is it going to be all division? I mean, like the four teams that get into the playoffs, do they play interdivisionally and then spread out from that? I'm
Yeah.
curious as to how they're going to do that.
Yeah, who
Does
knows?
yeah, I mean, I mean, is there going to be a wild card? I would assume there's not going to be a wild card this year, just as because it's already complicated as all get out. But I mean, I'm just I'm sitting here kind of wondering that maybe I'm looking a little too far down the road. Maybe because these
I would like to
the
see us at least get close enough, at least 10 to 15 games away from the end of the season, and everything humming along just fine before they lay out the playoffs, because I think it's still, like, this is initial groundwork. I mean, we still got to get to that January 13th date and make sure everybody can still get there and be healthy, and we got to get to that finish line healthy. I think they just want to get it rolling, see how it goes, and I think we're just taking it day by day at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's really not the worst way to look at it either. I mean, take it in stride, see how it goes till then. All right, all right. Well, I think we've covered pretty much everything about what's going on in the NHL now. So
Can I
let's
actually,
turn our attention to
Cody?
what?
Cody, do you mind? I've got one more hypothetical on this. I wanted to ask the group about.
Oh, by all means,
So
absolutely.
I've been kind of wondering about this ever since like it's become a thing in the NHL All-Star game, these 3-on-3 tournaments. And I've been kind of looking at how certain NFL teams have had to like really dig deep from their practice squads in order just to field a team and get a game going. And I'm kind of wondering because you don't have that same level of depth in hockey and the other leagues aren't operating to the same extent. I wonder, would the NHL at say the show goes on and start doing 3-on-3 tournaments with the teams instead of 5-on-5?
Oh wow,
That'd be an
that's
interesting
interesting.
twist, dude. That'd be
I
a
mean, I would
really
even take
interesting twist.
4-on-4 hockey too. I mean, you have more ice. You have a lot more open ice play, and you have, especially with the talents that the players coming into the league have nowadays, more spacing, more time would just add to a more exciting game, I feel like.
Hmm. Yeah. Plus 4-on-4
Especially in a
does
sport. It's
more.
all based about space and time.
Hmm. I'm
And
thinking
then
about it more than just like can you make a team and more like can we because in beer league sometimes it's like no screw it we're just doing 4-on-4 instead of 5-on-5 because that's all we got like
and I,
It'd be
I
kind of
don't
cool
see
to
that
see
being
like teams being like,
uh,
I'm gonna pick my top three from my team, and you pick your top three. But like your top three could totally be way better than the other team's top three. So it's like, do we limit players on who plays this many games, or that's kind of interesting how you can
well
almost pick the NBA and kind of overload a team with 3-on-3 players. It's kind of interesting.
I think that would be like an incredible like thing to watch on TV. The only worry I have about us going to that would it be like, everybody that didn't win the cup last year just throws it off. That Stanley Cup has an asterisk next to it. It wasn't a real season. If we're going down to 3-on-3 and 4-on-4, I wonder if that's going to be the discussion when it comes playoff time. Well, we didn't make the playoffs, but I mean, 3-on-3, it's not an actual season. And then I wonder if it takes away from the end goal a little bit.
mm-hmm.
I could definitely see that. I mean,
That
I would say in a lot of capacities, I think a lot of fans and teams would be pretty butthurt about that in the long run. And I mean, you got to think about. I mean, if you're playing 3-on-3, you're getting worn down way more. So that's like you're running your players completely ragged no matter what. If you, if you have enough players to play, or if you, especially if there's so many COVID cases on that team, you're still wearing down these players that are still playing. If anything, I would assume that they would be able to expand the roster to where a lot of your AHL players can actually come and practice and be with the team throughout the season before they would think about going 3-on-3 for sure.
Yeah.
Just kind of like what they did in the bubble for the playoffs is that they expanded the roster to what I think 3 goalies, and then you've got like 5 or 6 guys that are that are scratched every single night. I think you're gonna have more players to carry with you on your team before they even take a look at 3-on-3. Interesting thought, though. Very interesting thought.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, what if
call up the Zamboni driver?
Right?
I have a point to make on that real quickly. I have one point to make on that. What if the NHL did something like the NBA did with the summer league, where you did create maybe a 3-on-3 hockey tournament or a 4-on-4 hockey tournament? It could be a way for the NHL to make some revenue in between seasons, kind of help with what happened with the COVID. Or maybe doing like, if the players are interested in doing it, if they want to, go for it. It's 3-on-3, 4-on-4 hockey in a summer league. But I just noticed it's something that the NBA does every summer. It's just an interesting idea.
And I'd bring back team alumni for it too.
Hey Bryce, in that league, do the players that are playing in it, are they pros in the NBA?
Yeah, they're all professionals.
So are they getting paid extra money to play in that tournament?
I think they are, but it's not like anything you see in the season. It's probably, maybe 1/3 of what you would see in an actual game. It's like a 1-month tournament.
Okay. Because I look at that and I'm like, that's an awesome idea. That sounds like the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I know that they don't like giving the players out for anything other than the sport, but there's precedent there too.
It'd be different from like the Worlds.
Yeah, no,
like
I
that,
totally understand what you're talking about. I think it's a very interesting concept and almost like a showcase tournament to grow the game as well. Like, I think that's super interesting to think about. I know that when they had previous lockouts in the 90s, they had 4 NHLPA teams that played in a tournament sponsored by Kraft. And it was like a showcase tournament of the players because they wanted to play and the fans wanted it, and it was like operated under the NHLPA, not the NHL, and it's just, no pun intended, food for thought. So I like it.
Yeah, and it also gives rookies a chance to really, if they get drafted, it gives you a chance to maybe play some NHL hockey at a lower level, because a lot of these players might not be your highlight players like McKinnon or Landeskog or anybody else like that. It might just be people trying to really, add to their game in the off season. So give your rookies a chance to play some 3-on-3, 4-on-4, make some extra money before you hop into the NHL.
I think it would be, especially with the NHL coming up on the end of their current television deal, and if the rumors are correct that they could be possibly getting a deal with ESPN, I think in the off season, if you had like a 3-on-3 tournament with teams and like you bring back alumni with your like rookies and have them go in an off season tournament, I mean, what better way to grow the sport and put eyeballs on your team? Like you have a Ginla going against Sakic, and you bring in have Sakic on a team with Makar, Johnny Gaudreau with Iggy up in Calgary.
I mean,
everybody would tune in.
What if he's short in the ice? What do you think the ice rink's smaller?
Yeah,
now you're talking 3-on-3.
That would be so dope if it was you have to have 10 players under 20 and 10 players over 40.
Totally.
That would be
Jeez.
Totally.
Like, it would also be good because that club would be able to give those young guys leadership too, or at least show them how to drink beer properly and stuff.
Right, absolutely.
Well, and even going with the old guys too, you're going to get a lot more fans wanting to watch and being a part of that too, because they love seeing all those old players play. So
Yeah, for nostalgia
Oh,
sake,
for
for sure.
sure. That's the reason I went to the Stadium Series at Coors Field. It wasn't for the game with Landeskog in it. I wanted to see
Yeah.
Claude Lemieux, see if he would fight Chris Draper again, for
At least
sure.
the old guys still won. Jeez, man, I got problems with the Avalanche and Stadium Series. Apparently, they've got problems with it too. That's just all I gotta say. God. Well, that's interesting food for thought because if I'm not mistaken, like that NBA Summer League, it's also with like, later draftees too. Like
It is. It's
those
mostly
type of
draft
stuff.
picks or, guys who aren't your highlight players, just all-star players, but they're people who are at the professional level and you have a fan base who are willing to watch their favorite players or their favorite players on their team. So you look at what the NHL could do, because I look at even soccer. Soccer is the same thing. It's all around sport, and there's people playing all year long, and they're still making money. They still have a fan base. But I think as of a hockey player, we're sitting around until winter comes along again or October. We're like, oh gosh, I'm waiting for hockey. Give me some hockey, unless it's the juniors, world championships, or maybe it's the World Cup of hockey. You don't have summer hockey. That's just something that I think as a hockey fan, I think all of us are kind of eager to have is something just to watch. Had a good high level of hockey.
I just the soccer reference made me think of something. I need some help here as I'm not the soccer guru that you might be, Bryce, but doesn't the main leagues over there kind of operate towards a championship, but then they also have those leagues playing together in something called the Champions League? And it's kind of like the top few teams from each of these individual professional sports, like playing against each other in another
Isn't that
aggregate.
the CONCACAF?
Yeah, it could be that.
Yeah, I'm not a soccer expert, but I know that there's all different types of leagues where, you might not see your all-star players in it, but you're still seeing a really high level of the sport you enjoy.
What I'm actually talking about is like there's 4 high-end leagues, and then they all have their individual championships, like the Premier League, the Serie A.
Oh, yes, yes.
And then they also have like the top 3 teams from each one of those competing in something that I think is called the Champions League tournament. So it's kind of...
Yeah.
I think you're right.
So what I'm getting at is like, wouldn't it be interesting if like at the end of a typical NHL regular season, after you've had your Stanley Cup,
all divisions do that?
Then what you have is maybe like a tournament that takes place with the top 5 teams that have over the last aggregate 5 years have played the best. And so every year it's actually the last 5 years aggregate. So it's mostly the best teams every year. You could do something like that to keep it in the NHL. Or you could do something a little bit different that I think would be less competitive but still really interesting, which is like you take the top 3 teams from the NHL and the top 3 teams from the Swedish Elite League and the KHL and have kind of like a Memorial Cup style junior tournament, but at the NHL level. But I just think that the drop-off in skill level after NHL is too wide for it to be competitive, but it would be super interesting.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Daniel, because that is exactly what Simon Selberg is doing over in Europe right now, doing creating a Champions League for all like the Swedish Elite League, like the Hockey Allsvenskan, the Finnish Liga, all of that. That is exactly what he's doing over in Europe. So yeah, I mean, it is possible as of right now.
That is the origins of the Stanley Cup itself. When you won the Stanley Cup, it was challenge-based. It was almost like the 24/7 title in WWE. When you won the Stanley Cup, you had the target on your back, and the champion from all the other leagues in Canada, or whatever league, they would write you to request a game, and they would write you back to accept, and they would play. The winner keeps the cup, and then would be up for the next one. And that's the origins of the Stanley Cup.
That's true. That's dope. I love that you added that because the trophy's been awarded longer than the NHL has been a league.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
It says, you want to take on the champ? I'm right here. Like,
Yeah.
That's the one thing
It's pretty-
Ottawa Senators fans are holding on to is that they won the cup. Just not in the NHL during the
Right.
NHL. Oh well, I that's a lot of food for thought. Just as Daniel said.
Yes, I'm interested in the Alabama hockey though a little bit. Tell us about
Yeah.
the team you watched a little bit.
Yeah, I am from Birmingham, Alabama. We have a hockey team out here, ironically enough. We used to have an ECHL team, from like they were WHL, then WHA, all the way up till ECHL. And they left in the 2000s. They were the Birmingham Bulls. They moved to, I believe, Adirondack, if I'm not mistaken. But in 2017, they came back as an SPHL team, repping the sweater now, repping the tarp. We are actually playing hockey in this league. It's a 10-team league. 5 teams elected to play this season. The other 5 are going to postpone and wait till next season. But December 26th, puck drops for the home opener for the Birmingham Bulls. And it's like 2,000, 3,000 are allowed in the stadium.
Wow.
But we will have hockey in Alabama before the NHL.
Well, yeah, just interesting to me because I
See,
want to know about the atmosphere there. Is it like country music in a bar, like you just imagine? You're like, tell us about the atmosphere at those games, man.
Yeah, absolutely. The stigma around Alabama is that it is like every day's Dukes of Hazzard, but it's not. It's a rowdy atmosphere. Imagine SEC football, but with hockey. And like we have a rivalry, the Birmingham Bulls, their rival is just up the road in Huntsville, Alabama. They're the Huntsville Havoc. And those fans will travel. They get in buses, they get in vans. And either Birmingham's going to Huntsville or Huntsville's going to Birmingham. And those games are crazy. I mean, it's trash talking. The Bulls, we all have cowbells. Section 108. Bulls fans will know. That's the loudest section in the arena. You ring the bells. It's crazy. Look it up. I mean, there's video. There's websites. I mean, you could stream the games on Hockey TV. You wouldn't think it's a hockey hotbed, but I mean, ESPN came down here 2 years ago and did an article on the state of hockey in Alabama. I believe this was because Cam Talbot actually graduated from the University of Alabama, Huntsville. And that was like the big claim to fame here in Alabama. Nick Dowd, who plays for the Washington Capitals, was born and raised up in North Alabama. Okay. So I know you like to think we're like jumping the General Lee over ditches and stuff, but we could play, we say you could play hockey here from a fetus to diabetes. Like you can there's leagues for like learn to plays, and like there's a huge hockey community around here, and it's super cool.
That's amazing because I've been to Birmingham a few times. Love the people there, and I love the style of life. You just never think that you would find ice over there. And when I hear about that, I think that's just the coolest thing to hear. That you play, you got your own barn, you got your own city of ice, and you got your own awesome, unique set of fans out there. And so it sounds like a great time. So thanks for kind of elaborating about that, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
I love
fascinating.
That comparison. Oh, sorry. I love that comparison. It's like SEC but on ice. That's awesome,
yeah.
And I love to hear that. Birmingham's they bring the ruckus, man. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah,
when you're looking at football, it's a physical sport, and then you look at how hockey is a physical sport. I just think about how the fans are just as irate about football as they are hockey when you get into an arena like that.
And the teams around here, the college teams, they like kind of sync up, and they'll play their home games on like a Thursday night. And for $20, you can go and watch University of Alabama, Auburn, and UAB the Blazers, they'll play back to back to back, and $20 you get 3 games for 1 ticket. You just sit there, and it's just nonstop hockey, and it's college atmosphere. And I mean, everybody knows about Alabama and Auburn rivalry. It also translates to hockey. They have the Iron Cup, and it's just as rowdy, and it's super awesome.
That's awesome.
Three games for $20. I wish.
That's awesome.
It's the Bulls games are cheap to get into. I think it's like $35 to get up against the glass.
Oh. Wow.
I mean, you can't beat that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, for last NHL lockout, I think the closest we had to that was, the Denver Cutthroats. You could get into a game for like $15. Not unless, you lived like further up north and you were watching, the Eagles back in their ECHL days. But, I mean, I don't think I've ever gotten to see 3 games of hockey for $20. That's just,
And down here, people are spending hundreds of dollars on college football tickets because there's no professional teams in Alabama. We don't have baseball, professional football, or basketball. It's college football.
That's Tide.
It rules. Not here, my friend. I'm an Auburn fan, so.
Oh, good for you.
But
good for you.
Yeah, I've got some smart. War Eagle. But like, they'll spend hundreds of dollars for going out to a football game when it's like 95 degrees and 100% humidity. They're out there sweating to death, paying like $12 for like a drink, but you could go pay $20, sit at a Bulls game, and it's nice and comfortable, and the food's great, the drinks are great. I mean, how can you argue with that?
Seriously, sitting in nice ice.
Oh, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Be funny if when you went and played the Havoc, they served Rocky Mountain oysters at the concession stand.
Oh. No.
From here to Alabama, yeah.
I have to ask, and this isn't because it's Alabama, it's because it's the SPHL. Like, I got to imagine there's some fun things that happen during the games at intermissions as giveaways or something. Do you remember any of those by chance, or am I just... Is it more typical than I think?
It's more typical than you think. I think, well, because it is Alabama and you're in the Bible Belt, we have a church night. But other than that, like you're like T-shirt giveaways, and like in between periods you have like the Coke can races and bubble hockey.
Do they flood the ice with holy water on that night? Or
no. No. Yeah, that's actually what the ice is made of that night.
Interesting. Yeah. Just have a priest come bless the water before they put it down or something.
Yeah.
It's honestly like you come down here, and if you just like took a plane, landed in Birmingham, and took a short Uber to Pelham to the arena, and you sat down and watched the game, you would have no idea really where you were. You wouldn't think you were in the South. Like, they have the pyro, they have the music, the lights. Like, it's a full hockey atmosphere. And it's not every intermission, Sweet Home Alabama's not played, and that's not our goal song.
I'm imagining someone with like we're going to exercise your D-men sign and stuff.
Oh my God, yes.
That's clever. I like that.
That sounds fun.
It's a really cool.
Sounds like I'd love to go.
It's super cool.
No, it sounds like
it's a
hospitality and a lot of party mentality when you're watching a hockey game.
Yeah, you wear the right jersey, you're everybody's best friend. That's exactly how it is. You walk into the arena.
No, unless you're wearing the other jersey. I mean, hey, that's hockey, baby. That is hockey.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
To quote one John Forsland, I guess. So, I mean, have you you've grown up the entire? So you lived in Alabama your entire life, or did you move there?
I'm born and raised in Alabama, Walker County, Alabama, and that's a little more country, but I don't live there anymore. Born and raised in Alabama. I did live a couple years in Pennsylvania when I was like in my early 20s, but I'm born and raised in Alabama, and I'm back here, and I just don't have the country music accent.
Hey, that's all right. Not everyone can be Luke Bryan. But so how did you become an Avs fan? I mean, tell me how you got hooked onto the Avs, and just how that kind of influenced you on pursuing a fanship and obviously what you've done in hockey so far.
Well, growing up, it was one of those. I mean, grew up with a rabbit ear television, so you would adjust the rabbit ears to get the antenna right, put the foil on the end, and you would watch Forsberg and Waugh and Sakic on the ice. And those were the closest things to rock stars at the time for me. And then, like your first time seeing hockey, it takes all the competitive qualities from all the other sports, puts it on ice, and it's faster than all the other sports. And it's incredible. And you're just like, this is like, and then you tell everybody, like, you guys got to check this out. And everybody's like, well, that's a Canada thing. And you're like, no, you got to check this out. And I mean, I remember, it dates me a little bit, but like the Stars and Sabres games, like watching those games with the glow puck on Fox, like getting it just right so you can actually see everything. Oh, like those were like great memories. And like, those are the times you could go to Walmart and you could go get a Waugh figure in the toy department. Like, that's how big hockey was in the 90s. And, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And, like, just
Bryce
last year for Christmas, my brother...
I have so many bobbleheads.
My brother found one year, last year for Christmas, he found the starting lineup, Patrick Waugh, Joe Sakic, like, figure set from the 90s that I used to have. He found it in the packaging and gave it to me for Christmas. And, like, it's just, I've always been a hockey fan. And, like, when everybody talks their football around here, and, like, of course you get some Braves fans, and you get, like, Saints and Titans and, like, all that fringe fandom around here. I've always been beating the drum for hockey, and they always call me, like, the Canadian or, like, Hockey Jesus or... But I'll take it because, like, I'm, like, that passionate into the sport. Like, growing up, I would play the Super Nintendo Stanley Cup game, and I would, like, sim the season and, like, keep track of all the stats. And I would do that. I would play all the NHL EA Sports games, and, like, we still kind of continue that tradition on the Fourth Line Minute show where we sim the season right at the end of the show just to see who wins, just for the heck of it.
Nice.
But... like, hockey is, like, it's one of the best sports on the planet that everybody just kind of, like, they don't give it the respect it deserves because it has what everybody loves about the sport they're passionate about. They just don't give it a chance because for some reason it just doesn't have that appeal. And there's a disconnect, and I think it has to do with a lot of the lockouts. Baseball and the NBA went through it for a little while. And maybe the NHL can get this back on track and possibly get that ESPN deal where it is a little bit more lucrative now, where more eyeballs can get on it, because I'm telling you, it's the best sport on the planet.
I agree, Kyle, and I feel like a part of that disconnect is maybe just because of the speed of the sport. It's kind of hard for people to follow. And maybe some of the rules, they're like, why is there a whistle? Why did it stop? Or more importantly, why isn't there a fight going on? So it's just like these little things. I feel like you're right. There's a disconnect there between the sport and the fans and how they should perceive the sport.
And it's one of the harder sports to pick up and go play because it's so expensive. I mean, it's one of the more expensive sports to get into on that regard. And it's not like I could go find a patch of ice to go play on out here. Like, you got to go to a dedicated rink.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, I mean, most places, I mean, even up in Canada, you can just go to an open field, kick the ball around, or find, just some random basketball court or, a baseball field and have a bat and a ball and a couple of gloves and just, go at it. That is the one unfortunate thing about hockey is that, I mean, especially ice hockey, is that you need a designated spot to do it. Not everybody has these frozen lakes around here. Like, our brothers to the north to just go and pass the puck around. So I definitely agree with that, and it's a shame because I mean hockey is a great. I mean not only to watch the sport, but it is an incredible sport to be a part of and to play if you get the chance. And there is definitely a disconnect there with kids growing up, especially maybe in like lower income neighborhoods and stuff like that. It's definitely harder to reach for them.
Yeah.
So how did you get
like?
Oh, go for it. Sorry.
No, continue.
Oh no, I was just gonna see how did you get hooked up with Mile High Sticking? 'Cause I know you've been a contributor to them on occasion. Like how'd that go down? And I mean, can you kind of like talk about your role with them and how that all happened?
Yeah, absolutely. The contributions to Mile High Sticking came about with the affiliation and eventual friendship I had with the host of Locked On Avalanche, Chris Maselli. He heard about the position, and he's like, "Hey, bud," he's like, "you should give it a shot." And of course, I mean, before we hit the record button, I was also prefacing like my appearance here, like everything that has to do with like the realm of hockey. I always feel like I'm just a guy from Alabama. I'm not that significant. And I told him, I was like, who wants to look up an Avalanche article and see it's from a dude from Alabama? He's like, oh, give it a shot. So I gave it a shot, and of course they accepted. And I've been on a little bit of a break. I'm probably going to be picking it up in January again. But I've been writing with Mile High Sticking, sending in contributions, takes on the hot news that's been going on. But what I've been trying to do is it's called a series called Why Not Us? And it's because you ask any Avalanche fan about Avalanche history, they're going to tell you about the 2 cup years. They're not going to talk about the ones that we didn't win the cup. So my articles are about the ones we didn't win, using the hashtag we use on our playoff runs with Duchesne, the Why Not Us hashtag. I chronicle the series we didn't win the Stanley Cup and why we didn't, and the factors in that season that prevented us from winning the Stanley Cup. And I wanted it to lead all the way up to the 25th anniversary season, and I really didn't want this last season to be on the list, but we fell a little short, so 2019-2020 is going to be a Why Not Us article as well. But
No, and that's thought. I mean, you ask any Avalanche player, just like you said, or fan, I should support player as well. I mean, even when we were talking to Milan, he even made a point to say is that like we only won 1 cup when I was with them, and we had such good teams so many times. So that's a really interesting way of chronicling the years of like the Avalanche, where a lot of people think that they have been this powerhouse, but there's reasons why they missed the playoffs, and that's cool to maybe to preface and focus on that. That's a really interesting idea.
because I mean, you ask any Avalanche fan what their favorite season was, nobody's ever going to say the year with Paul Kariya and Tuomo Solani wearing an Avalanche sweater. I mean, in hindsight, you think about it.
Never.
I will.
But I'm talking
just because he's a Ducks
in
fan.
hindsight. Well, yeah. Well, I'm sorry about that, but like just thinking about it now, that's crazy. You have Paul Kariya, Tuomo Solani, Joe Sakic, and like
Forsberg,
it's just mind blowing to think about. Forsberg,
Time Hayduke.
you go down the
well.
and that was the season after Wall retired, and they were. That's
right.
one of the detriments in that season, and of course the injuries that really plagued them. But that's a moment in time that I don't know why a lot of Avalanche fans don't talk about more.
Oh, that team was stacked on paper. They should have
It is. It's a good
gone
point.
and
We
won
should
that.
talk about that shit more.
that cup.
Yeah, and it's one of those things because like you even watch like the altitude broadcast, like they'll always talk about the 2 cup years, and it's very seldom talked about everything else. So that was the point of a lot of the articles I was contributing.
I definitely agree. I mean, we've had some storied players just, I mean, all the time, like throughout the Avalanche history. That, I mean, yeah, it's completely overshadowed by the '96 and 2001 season.
I mean, Ryan O'Reilly started here.
I mean,
I can't believe we don't have him still. It makes me angry. We should still have Ryan O'Reilly.
Well, and another huge thing. I mean, Paul Stastny. I mean, huge. I mean, you've got the triplets, the Stastny triplets, and then Peter's son ends up getting drafted and playing for the Avalanche for what, first 5 or 6 years of his career, and I mean even that kind of floats underneath the bridge sometimes.
And then you had a line of Gabe Landeskog, Nathan McKinnon, and Matt Duchene. And it took them trading Matt Duchene for the top to be taken off of Nate McKinnon and him to go into superstardom.
Yeah.
Right.
So no, that's a great way to focus on a history of a team, because I mean you can do that for every team really, except for, I mean, obviously the Kraken. But so then you get locked in with Locked On Avalanche. Tell us a little bit about like your kind of role with Locked On Avalanche as well.
It was about a year ago to this point. It was about in February. Chris with Locked On Avalanche. He has this Fandom Friday segment, and he was like, "Email me, we'll get you on the show." And I'm like, "Why not give it a shot?" So I give an email, and he's like, finds out I'm from Alabama, and he's like, "Cool, we'll get you on." And then I come on, and like we hit it off, and we're like talking in the DMs, and I come on again, and then NHL, like the COVID shutdown happens, and he's like, "Hey, me and you are going to do the show together, the whole show." I was like, "Cool." Then I come on again, and like we're like super buddies. Like we're talking like all the time, back and forth, like it's Star Wars and look at Disney Plus and video games and hockey and when are we getting rid of Zadorov, and I can't believe, and then all the time, and then he's like, "Hey, you want to come on the show?" I'm like, "Sure." And then we're in this weird limbo phase, so he's like, "Hey, you want to match up Star Wars guys with Avalanche players?" I'm like,
Yeah, I heard that episode.
"You got it, dude." And I'll come on and we'll do Star Wars and we'll do Marvel characters, and then he's like, "Hey, why don't we just like start our own thing?" I was like, "Okay." And then Fourth Line Minutes was born, where it's just the most hockey conversation, laid back, like something comes up, we'll talk about it. Like we're not married like to being like your breaking news like hockey show, like, and we're not your like dedicated to just movies and TV and video games. We're just like, hey, it's our conversations in a podcast form, and it's on YouTube. So
Fourth Line Minutes, definitely check it out, all you listeners out there. I mean, I caught the first episode. I mean, just like you said, it's loose. It's I mean, it's just chatting, and I dig it. It's gonna be a great one.
And based on that background, I think we need him to do jerseys on the bench for us. Do a little cross promotion on our YouTube channels.
Right.
Oh yeah, that'd be perfect. Absolutely.
For those listening, because you obviously can't see, he's got a wallpaper full of hockey jerseys behind him, and it's just a sea of burgundy, and it's beautiful.
Oh yes, it's beautiful.
Those are just the ones I got up
Burgundy and
behind
blue.
me. I got more around me. I got a Ducks jersey in there. I got a 1970s Birmingham Bulls jersey in there.
Damn. There we go. Yeah, we need to see that.
Oh no, that's great. So, all right, now, well, knowing that you're an Avs fan, now we've talked about all that. Where do you see the Avs in this in the next 5 years?
Oh, at least I would like to see at least a cup. I mean, the way Sakic has this team put together, I mean, financially, even with the COVID uncertainty, I mean, we're still sitting in the upper half of financially stable teams, contracts settled, talent. I mean, every aspect. I mean, even all the way down to the Colorado Eagles, the Utah Grizzlies, they're taken care of. I mean, top to bottom, organizationally, I think the Avs are in a better place now than they ever have been. This could be the new golden era that 10, 20 years from now people are pointing back to. Nate McKinnon and Gabe Landeskog as your Forsberg and Nate McKinnons. I mean, your Forsbergs and your Sakics. I mean, we could have Landeskog be our GM in 10 to 20 years and Nate McKinnon be on the bench coaching. I mean,
what about the Moose?
We are. Oh, I mean, he could be assistant.
He's the Milan.
He'll be right.
You know.
Yeah, I feel like he's Milan of it all right now.
Yeah, Duke. Bring it on, bring it on. But I mean, it's where you look at the league. I mean, as an Avalanche fan, I mean, we had one of the darkest seasons in NHL history just a few years ago. So, I mean, I'd hate to get super optimistic and say, oh, yeah, the Cup is in our future in the next 5 years, and then be let down again. But the way we're put together, I don't see us not getting a Cup.
And then a question for you, too, Kyle, on top of the Avs and Joe Sakic being the GM. With him growing up in the, a somewhat decent Nordiques team and just seeing how that was built, I want to get your opinion on this, because mine is that helped him build the team of the Avalanche nowadays, because he's been through the ringer and he knows what it takes to build a team to go and win cups, since he was on one and saw it go from what it was to being this star-studded roster, like almost year in and year out.
Yeah, absolutely, and that doubles on that point where I was kind of jokingly saying Gabe and Nate could be in the front office one day. I mean, yeah. Joe brought both of them through those dark times where we had, I mean, the 16-17 season, and showed them this is how you build a winner. Just ride it out. Don't demand a trade like some people who's in Ottawa, Nashville, wherever he is now. But
cough,
like,
cough.
Yeah, just write it out and see what's in the works. I think Sakic is also training the next GMs of the league. It's funny that Stevie Y and Joe Sakic are like the biggest names in front offices when they were also big rivals on the ice in their playing days. So yeah, they both seen adversity, and they're both bringing both teams from the bottom. Detroit is on the verge of being something special in the next couple of years. Y'all keep your eye on them.
I agree.
They have cap to play with, and they have talent coming in. So keep your eye over there. And Stevie Y is over there, and he's pulling the levers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you see what he just did with Tampa too. I mean, there's going to be huge things in the making for Detroit. So.
Yeah. And we'll get that rivalry spun up again.
Let's look at what the Avs did last 2 years. The draft, free agency, what they've done this season, compared to other teams, and look at the budget we still have. We can still do it kind of like almost whatever we want right now. And you take all that consideration, and you look at the multiple teams are playing in our division this year. I think easily, if you look at last year compared to this year with the inquiries we have, we can win the division. But then I also think about, coming back to Cody's question, where do you see the Avs in 5 years? I almost kind of feel like you can see them in the playoffs 4 years, 5 years straight. I see us in 2 semifinal rounds, or maybe one, at least 2 cups. I think next 5 years you can at least see 2 cups, and that's really how I feel about it. And And to kind of go back to what Ross was saying earlier to ownership, in terms of Colorado, our football team and our hockey team, I think that Joe Sakic deserves way more credit if we win a cup than John Elway would ever deserve. And I'm going to end it on that.
Well, those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And all I'm going to say as a Canucks fan is we got really close. And if you asked me in 2009 what the Canucks looked like over the next 5 years, I would have said we're going to have 2 cups. And we've got all the financial wiggle room in the world to pull that off too, because that is what we had, guys. We had President Trophy winning seasons. We had enough money to pay Mats Sundin so much money to play for so little amount of time, and it did nothing for us. And we had the flex to do that, and then we didn't win. And what I'm only pointing out is, like, because the expectation right now is for the Avalanche to be cup winners, if it doesn't go well in the first 2 years of this 5-year plan and people don't see the results, that's when you start seeing players get frustrated. That's when you start seeing Ryan Kessler want to go play in Anaheim and force his way out of Vancouver. That's when you start seeing the team get dismantled, and you have Kevin Bieksa go, and you have other important pieces of your puzzle leave the team. And so I think if I can just add my heartache to this optimism, I agree with what you are saying if the next 2 years yields one of those cups. If not, you don't get any. I'm sorry. I don't want to say it's going to be repeating itself, but I feel like that's what players are like, and that's what happens. So.
And see, like, to your point, to Bryce's point, I think the thing that kind of is the separation from the 09 Canucks to where we are now is Joe Sakic's ability to do nothing. I know
what you mean by that. Yeah.
Trade deadline, no Chris Kreider. We didn't go after Chris Kreider, Taylor Hall. We didn't jump on all the big names when we had the money to do so. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even the season before this, the last season, he was balking at signing Mikko Rantanen. You remember he missed all of training camp.
Yep.
Because they were going over money. I mean, and he's worth it. But Sakic had his price tag. Mikko had his, and he is perfectly fine sitting there saying, "Okay, meet me in the middle." And it's Sakic's ability to do nothing and hold his stance on things is what gives me that little bit more confidence that we're in the right position going forward.
And each year in playoffs, last 3 years, we've gotten farther last 3 years. Each year, last 3 years, gotten a little bit farther. And now it's just kind of putting the last final touches in the cake.
Yeah, and we were a one-line team 2 years ago. Last year we had 2 lines. And with Devin Tays and Brandon Saad, we now have 3 full all-star lines.
We have 4. I mean, when you've got
agreed,
guys
4.
like Matt Calvert, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare on your 4th line, like with your PK, I'm going to go as far as saying we've got the Avs have a 4-line team at this point.
I just feel like teams are going to be very overwhelmed come the first period. They're going to get tired. Half to the second period, Avs are just going to start taking on that third period team. We're just caking on goals halfway through the second period into the third period to where teams are just so tired of trying to relentlessly deal with our 4 lines and the movement of the puck and the speed that we have and the conditioning from being here in the Mile High. I feel like that really does contribute to a lot of things.
Yeah, and how many teams in the NHL how many fan bases could sit there and be like, well, who's not starting tonight? Like, it's Jost is sitting there on that sitting, being scratched. Like, how many people know the name of the player that's not going to be dressing that night? Like, we are that deep that's actually a topic of conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. And I mean,
Yeah,
especially
I
now
agree.
with the emergence of Logan O'Connor in the playoffs, he's going to be vying for his spot as well. I mean, eventually Alex Newhook, Connor Timmins are going to be coming into the league. Bo Byram, all these guys. I mean, even could be even just this year be coming in and taking those spots from a Tyson Jost, which I
I mean,
mean with the output that Jost has had over the last couple of years, very underwhelming. So I mean,
yeah.
he could be looking at getting scratched a lot because of these other guys that are coming in that Joe is so savvy in acquiring or drafting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Well,
got
and
to
even with
understand
his
it's cup or
size,
bust.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say, Ross?
Oh, I was saying Joe's size, too, doesn't help him, along with not having the skill sets, because you look at guys like Makar and Gerard, they can skate circles around guys, where Joe's, he gets barely caught northbound in the southbound lane, he's on his ass. So, I mean, I'd rather him be more on the scratch list than be playing, honestly, because there's a lot better potential with players that we have coming up here in this season.
Well, we'll see come training camp for sure who we get started in this season, and we'll find out here shortly. So
And I mean, just to
with
bring
that,
us all back, like in this COVID situation, the depth is important, like in
oh
a
yeah,
different way, right?
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
absolutely. And I
Yep.
mean, the Avs, and Joe listened to the critics, and he's made a change, and now we're probably one of the deepest teams right now in the NHL.
I think so.
Well, and I love how everybody was just bashing him, like, as we were saying in the 17 season, and even right around that. It's just like, now they're just singing his praises, and he just looks like a fucking genius now, basically.
I think,
And he's not even done yet.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's the scary thing, too.
And you got to think though, like he had a lot of work to do with the team that he inherited too. So I mean, you had to wait till some contracts expired. You have to buy a couple guys out. You have to wait till some guys really actually grow into their skates and stuff like that. But I mean, to round it off here, yeah, I think he's done such a great, incredible job. Well, I'll tell you what, boys. I think we got an episode here.
I think so
You
too.
betcha.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the show, we always like to send shout-outs. So, Kyle, if you got any shout-outs you want to send to anyone, sing their praises now, bud.
Shouting out my girlfriend for supporting me and not minding that I'm on this, like, on podcasts all the time. Follow Fourth Line Minutes. Follow Locked On Avalanche with Chris Maselli, my co-host on Fourth Line Minutes. And definitely love you guys' show. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Thank you.
Oh no, thank you. All right, Daniel, what do you got, man?
I'm definitely going to echo your comments and say shout out to my girlfriend because, when I'm not talking about my podcast with my friends, I'm now talking on my podcast with my friends. So there's a lot of that happening in this house right now, and I really appreciate her for all that she does to help me have fun with you guys in these COVID times. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Your insight was awesome. We're really excited to check out more of your content. And I'll leave the shout-outs of our sponsors to the other guys and just want to say thanks for being on and be well, be safe.
What you got, Ross?
Well, once again, I'm going to say the girlfriend, I mean, friends, family, wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you guys and them listening. And thank you, Kyle. This was fun having you on, man, especially an Avs fan from Alabama. So, yeah, a shout-out to My Beer Nation. And, yeah, that's all I've got, guys.
What you got, Kimbo Bryce?
All right, so I'm a single man. I'm a single man, so shout out to the next girl who dates me, and my family, my friends, the podcast, My Beer Nation, and of course, thanks again, Kyle, for hopping on, buddy.
Yeah, I love how the single people go last. Like everybody's like, yeah, my girlfriend, and then it's Bryce and I just like, yeah, we're alone. I just want to say thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Kyle, so much. Even before coming on, really supporting the podcast, and thank you for coming on and talking with us. Great insights. I just want to say thank you to all the listeners. Also, obviously, Dog Nation. And yeah, check out Locked On Avalanche podcast and Fourth Line Minutes podcast. As of right now, I know you're on YouTube.
We are on YouTube. The podcast form is in the work.
Well, hey, I would be remiss if I didn't say use Anchor. It's the easiest way to. Anyways, yeah, thank you to also, everybody.
Don't forget for everybody.
Yeah, we should get an extra cent for that one, eh? Anyways, yeah, thank you to all the listeners. Thank you to Kyle. Thank you to everybody else that's been on here. And with that being said, we'll catch you next time. So be harsh.
A bientôt.
Salute.
Wiedersehen.
Adios. Adios.
Clear. Fucking A. All right. Tip of the tongue, the teeth, and the lips. Tip of the tongue, the teeth, and the lips.
Red leather, yellow leather.
Lemon
Red
face.
leather, yellow leather.
Yes.
The Human Torch.
Lemon
Unique
face,
New York,
lime
unique
face.
New York,
Bank
unique
loan.
New York, unique New York. All right,
Tape
back
the
at
stick
it.
from
All
heel to
right.
toe. Tape the stick from heel to toe.
God damn it. All right.